Hey, what's up, comrades? Hope everyone's doing great. We're back for another Dazzler arc. My favorite. So, Dazzler's actually gotten a lot better. I'm actually enjoying myself. But this one focuses on her time. So she had a top single hit, and now she's moved to Los Angeles to she came to Los Angeles to help her sister Lois reconnect with her father. And while she's here, she wants to get into like the movies and do other things that are not related solely to her singing. And so this arc is called like the fame arc because she's working on becoming like more famous and not just being like a one-hit wonder and whatnot. So it consists of books or volumes, issues 29 through 34. And so we're going to start with 29, which again, it's like the name of the book is the name of like the arc is Fame. And so we see her talking to like Harry, her manager in New York, and about everything that's going on and how she's doing so great. And then there's like, she's supposed to be in a movie with like Robert Redford and all this stuff. And, you know, she's living the high life and living the big life and the dreaming and stuff. But then we find out that, that was all just a dream. Like her being fancy, being on the cover of like Time magazine, all that stuff, being in a movie, being able to just expense whatever. She's just lounging, taking a little napsopotamus at Lois's like dad's like estate. And then she talks about, and then Lois like complains about her life being a nightmare and being a mutant and whatnot, and how her power to like just destroy things, and about the incident they had with Rogue coming over here and everything. And then Lois kind of gives us a recap of her father, how so they're half sisters because Allison's mom like left her dad that when she met this other guy and cheated on Allison's dad, and then she got together with Lois's dad, but he was like an abusive drunk, and eventually I think her name's Barbara if I remember correctly, and took Lois, and they like went off and like kind of did their own thing and whatnot. And so Lois like cries about that, and then we meet this guy, Roman Nekoba, and he is like bald, like fat, like can't see straight. He just looks like he lives in this giant mansion, and he's supposed to be like this world famous, like super hot, handsome, kind of like a Robert Redford type character. And so we see him like get up, and he's like missing teeth. Like he just looks like a complete disaster. But he puts contacts in, puts a wig on, cinches himself up with like a girdle, puts contacts in, all that stuff, and then he just looks like a handsome, like slightly older man, like definitely like a movie star or whatnot. And then he's like chit-chatting with this guy about how he's like, he wants to do this and buy this, but he has like no money. He's like super in debt. Like the royalties have ceased. Like his broker is like saying all these terrible things, and his life's just a complete mess. And he's like, whatever, I'm going to go be in this movie, and I'm going to find this girl, Allison Blair, who, because Lois's dad represents Roman. But then like his accountant's like, you're doing terrible. Anyway, so then Allison's just out doing like modeling for commercials or whatever. But she's set up to meet up with Roman, which she does, and he's super flirty with her, and like goes and he buys like a fancy car that he can't afford, and he just puts it on credit, and they're like driving around super fast, and then they get in this plane, and we meet the Buck or Hack, we meet Hack, and they're just flying around having a gay old time. When all of a sudden like a jet plane comes and like starts circling around them. And then Hack's like, what the fuck is that? And it just starts firing on their jet. And so the whole thing like tips around. Roman gets knocked out. Hack got like shot in one of these things. But Allison uses her light powers to blast the jet, knocking it out of the sky. And then she runs up. She's like, Hack, you okay? And he is not okay. He is like out, and he's been shot, which wraps up that first episode. Issue 30 picks up, the plane's like in a lot of problems, and Allison's trying to get Hack to wake up, but he's not waking up, so she tries to wake Roman up, but he's like completely out of it, and he mentions that there's a couple parachutes. So she gets one of the parachutes, wraps it around Roman, kicks him out of the plane, and then she goes and drags Hack over, gets a parachute on him, and then jumps out with the two of them. And while they're falling, she creates like this light blast or whatever to try to get some attention, and luckily for them, some like California state troopers see them. And so then, but Hack gets like rushed back to the hospital, and when she gets there, she finds Roman. He's just signing autographs to the doctors and hanging out because apparently he landed on the roof of the hospital, and even the police officers are like, give us your autograph, yay, hooray, everything's going great. Allison then heads back to Lois's dad's place. Nick Brown is his name, and he's like, hey, let me be your agent, blah blah blah. And she's like, no, Harry's my agent, I'm not going to leave him. And he's like, something sex sells, and she's like, don't touch me, like blah blah blah, you're kind of an asshole. And Lois comes up and she's like, I heard you arguing with my daddy, but like, you know, he's not a saint, but he did what he needs to do, and I need to reconnect. And then Allison is like, I'm out, And Lois is like, "Oh no, we just became sisters again. I don't want to lose you." And she's like, "You won't lose me, but I'm done with this asshole," which is like good for her. So she just starts like meandering about. She meets some nice gentleman who drives her down to like San Diego, and then we get some like warning at the beginning of this issue, and it's about how like this issue is like editors week or junior editors week. So it has a lot of like kind of stupid nonsense about, they go to like San Diego Comic-Con, and it has a lot of like this kind of side story with like these like junior editors just like hanging out, they're like the actual Marvel junior editors who are like hanging out at Comic-Con and whatnot. We also find out more that like this whole thing with the plane, like, so there was like a question about like, why are they attacking Roman? And Roman's like, I don't know, people are always trying to get after me and stuff. And it's like a jet plane. And so we find out that there's this military organization here that's working for whoever anti-mutant stuff that's going on in like the X-Men books predominantly, and that they went to shoot down Allison specifically and kill her, and that the other people dying was like a whatever, but that she survived. And so they're super mad. And then anyway, so over at then we get some bullshit that I didn't really read about like the editors and what they're doing and going to the Comic-Con and all that bullshit. And Allison eventually finds her way into, the editor who dropped her off gave her like $20 so she could stay at the YWCA. And so she goes there and she eats some breakfast there, and she just needs to make a call to get some money or whatever so that she can afford to actually like get going here in Los Angeles. So she calls Harry. And he's like, yeah, I'll forward you over some money. And we get a little bit of them doing some shit, and then we go back to like the editors doing bullshit at the Comic-Con. And eventually Allison like heads over that way to meet up with this guy. Meanwhile, the military anti-mutant guys are like setting up some sort of device because they're going to attack Allison here at the convention center. They have some device that will like make mutant powers go out of control. And then once it goes out of control, then they can subdue her, and like everything's going to be great. And so they start to use, and Allison starts like having a real tough time, and she's like freaking out. But then it comes to terms that like one of these like soldier guys, he's immune. So then he turns into like a giant lizard dinosaur looking thing and starts just like causing a muck. He breaks the machine. Oh no, he doesn't break the machine. He just starts beating the shit out of the soldiers and everything. And then Allison comes over and she destroys the machine, but it doesn't stop the dinosaur guy from being a dinosaur guy. So she has to like fight him with her light powers anyway. And eventually she crumbles like the building on top of him. She then finds the editor guy that helped her earlier, and she goes to rescue him. And then let's see. Just call. Then he calls in because all the editors think that maybe he died or something, and they're just like having a party because he's not there. I don't know. It's like it's a whole thing I don't give a fuck about. But then Allison's like, whatever, I'm heading back to Los Angeles. Issue 31, Alice is on like a movie set, just kind of hanging out, trying to, she was like sent over here by Roman to like watch this filming, to maybe like meet some people or whatnot. And then we see these stunt guys doing some pretty badass stuff, including this guy Bill. And Allison is like talking to Bill's mother, and she's like, "Oh, my sweetheart, he's so wonderful and precious, and he's handsome as shit." And so she's really kind of like, "Ooh, handsome boy." And he's like super flirty with her, and he gives her her calling card. We then head back over to Allison. She, with the money she was able to get and like working some part-time jobs, she's able to like rent like an actual apartment and not be staying at the YWCA. Unfortunately for her, the people who own the house like hate mutants, so she's got to be like really quiet about the whole situation. She's not, though. She just like hangs out and like is using her light powers all the time, so she doesn't have to pay for electricity or whatnot. Anyway, she's in like a dance class trying to work on that, and then she eventually gets a job at this like health club, and while she's there she runs into Bill again, and he's all cut up and whatnot, and so they flirt, and then she's gonna go on like a date with him, and then Harry calls and cancels his like him being her agent because he's in New York and she's in Los Angeles, and he really can't help her, and he's super upset about that because she's like a daughter. And so he storms off, and then the secretary, who hates Allison, like sasses like, good, fuck her. And then her name's Cassie, and then the guy she likes, Lance, who's like been super homies with Dazzler this whole time, is like, "Cassie, you're a real cunt," and like storms off. Meanwhile, Allison gets some flowers from Bill, and she's like, yay. So she starts teaching her aerobics class. Bill comes over to see it, and he invites her out to lunch. They go to lunch. She goes to watch one of his movies being filmed because he's a stunt guy, and there's like this crazy explosion with fires and stuff, but he's okay. And then she comes over and is like, hey, what's going on? And he's like, let's go have dinner. And she's like, okay, sounds good. So then she sets up dinner at her place. He comes over, gives her a gift. They have this cute little dinner and whatnot, and they're like about to get all smoochy. And then he's like, no, what's the point? You're just going to leave me some whiny bullshit or whatever. And he's like, well, and then she's like, convinces him to like keep hanging out. And so he's like, let's go back to my place. And he's like, all right. And as they're heading there, there's like all these cars moving away from like Malibu or wherever his house is. And so he stops one of the cars and he pulls over. He's like, what's going on? It's like, oh, there's like a tidal wave. It's going to destroy all the homes. And Bill's like, no, my home. And he's like, Allison, get out. I'm going to go. And she's like, no, I'll come with you. So they go back, and then he just like takes his jacket off and stands in front of like the door or whatever, and he's just like ready to die. And then she calls him out for being an asshole and like wanting to die and not wanting to like live anymore, and like his whole life he's just not wanted to live, and like all the stunts and everything is just him trying to like kind of kill himself somewhat. And so she's like, I can't be with you, that's crazy, and like I'm not going to stay here and die, I'm leaving. And so then he's like, that's fine, get out of here. And then he's like, wait, no, I want to live. So she goes out and she's like, oh my gosh, the storm's crazy, I gotta get him out of there. And so she runs back to the house, can't find him, and then she goes and sees like this crazy tidal wave, and then she uses like her light powers to like create a hole in the tidal wave so it goes like around his house. So his house is fine. Unfortunately, she gets hit and knocked into the water, and Bill has to like go out to the water to like save her and then resuscitate her, and then carries her back up to his house where he comforts her and gets her a blanket, and she crashes for the night. The next morning they get all smoochy smooch, and they talk about how maybe someday they can be a couple, but for now he needs to like figure his shit out and like get over all this like childhood trauma or whatever. And she's like, cool, catch you later. And so that wraps that up. Next issue, we have some fun going to the moon and hanging out with the humans and stuff. In fact, it begins with Allison just kind of like doing her aerobics class, and then Medusa and the big teleporting dog, I can't remember what his name is, they teleport right in the middle of the class, and Allison's like, the fuck? And then Medusa's like, we need your help on the moon. And she's like, you can't just like show up. And she's like, you owe us, we helped you defeat like 2 other guys. And she's like, bro, I have my own life, I'm not a superhero anymore, I'm just doing my thing here. And then Medusa's like, we were very disappointed, and leaves. And Allison's like, Jesus Christ. So she goes and gets her class, and they finishes up aerobics and whatnot. And then she goes out with her new best friend, who is Janet. And she's this like sexy model lady with like awesome curly permed hair and whatnot. And so they hang out, eating coffee or drinking coffee and talking about like life and doing the right thing and helping people and all that good stuff. And then Allison sees Medusa. Medusa hasn't gone back because she has to wait for like the dog to like recharge his charging. And she's like, all right, fine, I can help you, but I got to be back tomorrow at work. And she's like, excellent. So then they go to the dark side of the moon. And Allison says hi to Black Bolt, who she met before, and she's wearing some sexy, like, Atlantean, or not Atlantean, like, Italian, not Italian, like, Atalian. I don't know how they say their fucking name of their kingdom. But there's some issue with some dark cloud that's coming, and it's causing all sorts of problems and whatnot, and since she has light powers, I figured they could take care of it. We then see these 2 bad guys, Moonstone and Asshole, who are... What is this fucking guy's name? They're trying to encroach upon they're like bad guys who work together, and they're encroaching on Atlan, trying to cause problems or steal something or whatnot. And she has black guy, his name's Blackout. So Moonstone can cast like some sort of like attack magic, and then Moonstone can cause blackout, or Blackout can cause blackout. And so they want Allison to use her powers to do the light stuff, and so they finally convince her, and so she's like, all right, let's do this. So she takes like the sound from Black Bolt and converts it into like super powerful light and like blasts the shit out of them. And if Blackout, when he causes his blackout, they can like breathe on the moon, even though they're not inside the protective thing of the Atlans. Anyway, so once they see the bad guys, Quicksilver goes up, and the Moonstone blasts him real good. And then starts blasting the tower and whatnot. And the Black Bolt to create more air so Moonstone can take a breath. And then Allison uses like some super fucking light powers, and they're going back and forth. And then Reed Richards back in just like Reed Tower is like, what's going on? And so he gets a call from Crystal, who is Quicksilver's like wife, and the sister of Medusa is like, hey, what's going on? And she's like, we got it under control, no worries. And he's like, okie dokie. Anyway, we get like shown an anime battle between Moonstone and Black Bolt and Allison, just bam, blasting each other, and eventually Black Bolt like collapses, and then Quicksilver goes and grabs him, and the Moonstone tries to blast Quicksilver, but he's too fast, and so then she passes out from lack of oxygen. And so Allison Blair saved the day, and there's some handsome guy there, Banth, and she's like, oh, you're so handsome, maybe we could hang out sometime. And he's like, you betcha. And then it's like time for Allison to go, and so they do. And she's back at her home, and she's like, time for a nap, and she goes to bed, and it's 8:44, and then her alarm goes off at 8:45, so she can go back and do her aerobics class. Wah, wah, wah. Next up, we start with Allison and Janet at a horror movie. Oh no, Allison hates it. She hates horror movies. She storms off, and then Janet comes out. And she's like, "Oh yeah, I don't like scary movies either." And Allison's like, "Sure, why not?" Anyway, so Allison is like freaking out. Like she's walking home. She keeps like jumping at every slight sound. She gets into like her apartment, which she was living in a house with some guys, and now she's just living in like an apartment, I guess downtown. So she moved at some point. And the person calling is Roman. Hey, haven't seen that guy in a while. Yep, he's still around. He wants to invite her out to a party that evening. So he goes with her and he wants to introduce her to some people, but really he just wants to be seen with her. And she starts to get that vibe. But she meets up with this gentleman, Bob, who did the scary movie she saw earlier. And he's going to do a music video for Michael Jackson. They call him Teddy Lingard here, but it's Michael Jackson. Essentially, she's going to do Thriller. At that point, Bob like heads out, but then his car like explodes, and Allison goes and tracks him down and finds him, and he's like, "Oh goodness, I got to rescue him." And so she uses her light powers to rescue him and protect him, and then her and Roman take him home. The next day, she's getting ready to go do aerobics class, and after aerobics class, she calls Bob about like this opportunity to be in a music video, and so she goes and does some dances and gets hired, and then she gets zombie makeup. Well. And so she goes and meets with other zombies, and they practice their dancing and whatnot, and then Michael Jackson shows up, and the Bob guy is like super fascinated. He's like super into this Michael Jackson character. And Michael Jackson's character is like, sure, whatever. We then get Allison, who needs to go use like the bathroom. And so while she's gone doing that, she overhears Bob talking about how he kind of set up all these things and how someone's going to die and it's going to make him more famous or whatever. And so then she's like, okay, good to know. So then there's a scene where they got to like pop up from the graves. And so they all lay down, all like the extras lay down in graves and get covered with dirt, and the idea is that she is not going to be able to get out and she's going to die, right? And that's part of like this mystique that Bob's like trying to create to get himself to be more famous. So then they start the music video, and then he like calls cut because Allison's not getting out, and he goes over to like check on her to pretend like he actually cares, and then she just like pops out, and he like freaks the fuck out because she's supposed to be dead, right? And she like grabs at him and is like, "Bob, that's it, I'm here to get you," and he like freaks out, and he's like running away, and then he runs into some like news people, and he like confesses everything, that he like caused the explosion himself, like all these accidents that he's known for are like him doing it to try to get more mystique and whatnot, and then he actually tried to kill Allison. And then once he realizes that she's just fucking with him, he tries to run away, but then Michael Jackson like kicks his feet, like moonwalks his ass, and the police come and get him, and then Allison and Michael Jackson have like a cute little conversation, and that wraps up that issue. The last issue of this little fame arc begins with some models being disappeared, right? And then we head back over to like the LA Fitness or whatever, where Allison's doing her class, and afterwards she's just chit-chatting with Janet, and Janet's like, "You're so beautiful, you should be a model, totally, like call blah 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 blah." She gives her like a card for like this modeling agency. I think she does at this point, yeah. And then we get some fan service for changing in her outfit, and then she takes some shots of herself and then mails it to like Millie's models or whatever. And then Millie, who is in charge of Millie's models, sees Allison's shots and is like, "Wait, I love her, get her over here right now." And then as she's like, she gets the letter. Wait, does she get the letter? Oh no. Allison's just doing her thing. She's headed home, and then Roman shows up, and he's like chit-chatting with her, and she's like, "Leave me alone. You took me to that party just so you could be with me or whatever, and I don't want a relationship like that, and like you're not helping me, and so I'm just going to do things on my own. Like the best way to handle LA is to do things on my own and not get help," which is insane. But anyway, so she kicks him out, but then she got the letter saying like, "Come be a model." So she goes, and then we meet Chili, who was like a rival of Millie back in the day, and she wants to be a model, but Millie keeps turning Chili down, and Chili is kind of an asshole. And Millie's like fed up with her bullshit. Anyway, we find out that Allison got the job. She's gonna be the model, and Chili's like watching her and being like, "I can't believe it, that dumb bitch." And so then she starts doing modeling stuff and doing pictures, and hopefully she'll be picked up or whatever. And they all go to this Hugs like expose or whatever, where she's gonna dress up in clothes and walk down the thing. And while everyone's getting ready, she finds this calling card, which is for like Revenge Incorporated. She's like, "The fuck is this?" Anyway, so all the models go out and they start modeling all the clothes and whatnot, and everything's going great. And then models start disappearing, like all of them, like even Chili. And then Allison calls out Chili for being the one who like called this company and is doing this. And Chili's like, "I don't know what the fuck you're talking about." And then both of them disappear, and then all the models disappear. And then Millie's like, "What the fuck?" Including Allison. And so then all the girls are like in this prison, and then there's like this jabroni who's like, I'm divine. I hate Scruggs. I hired that company so that I could get you all to model my stuff, and then you're going to model my stuff, and I'm going to be famous, and Scruggs can eat a dick. And then he leaves. And then everyone's like freaking out, all these ladies. And then Allison's like, I got an idea, but I got to distract everybody. So she's like, hey, give me a nail file. I can get out of here. I saw it in a movie once. And everyone's like, here you go, you crazy bitch. And then Allison's like, got it. So then once they all turn away, she uses her light powers to unlock the door. And then they all storm the second floor where it's like the guy's just like designing clothes. And they beat the shit out of him. The next day, Allison's back at Millie Models. And she is like, oh, I'm good. I don't want to be a model anymore. It was fun, but whatever. And then when she's heading out, she sees Roman again, and he's like, I don't give up that easily. And she's like, whatever, leave me alone. And then he's like, and then she like yells at him a little bit, and he's like, whatever, settle down, toots. And then she's like, I got more problems to worry about than this. I got to figure out what this Revenge Incorporated is and why they're doing all their bullshit and whatnot. And that wraps up Fame, the arc. And so the next time we'll find Dazzler, will be a while, but it's her big like annual or whatever. But go ahead, like, share, subscribe, comment, and I'll catch you guys later. Bye.